Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to my brothers and sisters in Islam, and salam to everyone else. This is Ali. I have to make this video in urgency in that now it seems that I need to defend myself against some slanderous accusations. This whole saga in regards to freedom of speech and fanaticism began, at least with me, with my video entitled Moderates, or Do Moderates Cover for Fanatics? In that video I argued that this was basically a very illogical argument. This was a very this is basically an argument disguised as sort of a rational position when it was simply meant to convey a bigoted view of those you oppose. In response to this, an individual by the name of AntyBu86, who argued later on that his video was interpreted incorrectly and that he was trying to merely get me to side with him in his position on freedom of speech. He responded to this video by simply stating, well, how come I've never heard of any moderates speaking out against fanatics? And then went on to draw the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ with bombs strapped to him. Of course, he calls it a girdle, but it was pretty obvious what it was. Now, in response to this, I posted a video called Responding to Bigots, in which I basically went against AntyBu because that did not seem to be what his intention was. In context of my first video, it seemed like he was simply making a mockery of the discussion, simply to post his view that he had the right to offend people whenever he wished and to insult me or others. And if he truly wanted, me to ally with him, he would be at least a little bit more respectful to the people he's trying to ally with. If you're trying to make an alliance with an individual, you don't slap them in the face first. Anyways, that was a very passionate video from me, responding to bigots. That was a very passionate video for me because it kind of explained, me being kind of sick and tired of having to be placed in with fanatics. It's not my responsibility to apologize for them or to even have to speak out against them. By merely trying to educate people about what Islam really teaches, and by educating people about what Muslims really believe by majority, and by educating people about myself, and by distancing myself from the fanatics, that should be enough to speak out against them. I never found it to be constructive to simply yell and shout and call them evil. I think that's actually counterproductive, in that I think that's what the fanatics want. The fanatics already view me and the rest of the world as kafir, basically infidels. So to basically just be pissed at them and post a video response, which they're probably not going to see anyway, because most fanatics do not watch YouTube, as at least I don't think they do. I mean, they're a very small minority, and at the same time, they don't really have access to those sort of things, this sort of medium. Which is another reason why I don't, have constant, videos up talking against extremists, because, nobody's going to be watching them. So it's a very passionate response. That was later met with some ideas about freedom of speech. I got into some very civil discussions with individuals regarding the freedom of speech and how I deemed hate speech is not part of that concept. I've been trying to define it as best as I possibly can by basically calling it a form of slander or libel. I don't believe slander and libel are protected under the freedom of speech. I believe that consequences come whenever you slander or libel somebody. And I think similarly, a sort of a universal slander or universal libel, which is what I call hate speech, should also be given consequences. And what I mean by slander is, for instance, there's a difference between saying that somebody's a bad lawyer and saying somebody doesn't have their license to be a lawyer. One has some very real legal repercussions and community repercussions. Likewise, I would not think it appropriate to label all Muslims as terrorists. I think that is a form of slander or libel that likewise that should be um, allowed to be fought against, or at least have some sort of repercussions in the legal sense. I did not call for a law that got rid of speech altogether or got rid of certain forms of speech. I called simply for some sort of legal action towards those sort of speech, towards that sort of speech. So basically, in the same way that slander and libel is dealt with. Later, I had seen a video from Thunderfoot, where he very much did not qualify any of his statements. He basically universalized his condemnation to all Muslims, basically stating the Muslims. He never said, you know, the fanatical Muslims or Muslims. He said the Muslims. At first, upon watching his video, I doubted that he really meant that. But when he talked about moderates, that's when I knew that he meant in the universal sense. Because when he said moderates, he really didn't believe that there were moderates. He said that the moderates are only significant in their silence, and that speaks volumes for their attitude towards terrorist and fanatical thinking, which basically I think any person with any sort of basic comprehension of language can understand means that we basically endorse the same actions as the fanatics do. I went against this video, pointing this out. The beginning of my video was very clear. I stated specifically, very clearly, that my video was against all extremists of all ideological bent, whether they be Muslim, non-Muslim, doesn't matter. All ideological bent, all extremists. My video was directed towards them and them alone. Done. So that should have been clear. I then went on to say, basically to show that Thunderfoot's way of thinking is the same as the fanatics. And then I went on to give a similar warning that Thunderfoot gave in his video. Now, people are telling me that his warning in his video regarding waking the sleeping giant and is just metaphorical. It doesn't really mean what it says. His pictures of a stealth bomber and a child bomb strapped to him, comparing the two and saying how powerful the West is and how the Muslim world basically crumble at the feet of the West. And of course, I'm paraphrasing some things here, but it was kind of obvious what he was saying. And most skeptics who are also subscribed to me also believe this to be the case. So for those out there who simply think, oh, I'm just, it's just the theist or the Muslims who are supporting me with this. No, that's not the case. He clearly made a warning that the Muslim world will be basically destroyed by the West because of what the fanatics are doing. And he made no distinction between the fanatics and the Muslims. So he included me in that. And I was very much offended. And I was very passionate in my response in that I do not like oppression of any sort, whether it be from the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, or anybody else. Okay, that sort of thinking reminded me of how my friends cry and talk about how Western soldiers, kill innocent people, their own family members. How the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, blow themselves up and kill their own family members. We moderates are stuck in between two forms of fanaticism, and it just awakened in me this sadness and this fear. And I issued a warning myself, which unfortunately is construed simply as a death threat. And it's not actually surprising because I'm Muslim, so anything that I say in any sort of retaliation is going to be considered wrong automatically. And in my response, I simply stated that if Thunderfoot or anybody who thought like awaken any sort of sleeping giant that was hostile, meaning that they were to hurt innocent human beings, whether they be Muslim or non-Muslim, that we people, humanity, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, would basically, yeah, we would kill him or people like him. And I think that is a very legitimate thing to say. I'm sorry. I think that is a common value that most of humanity shares, that killing innocent people must be fought against. And I am so shocked that people would sit here and simply claim that I'm making just a general death threat because my religion is evil and, and I am evil or whatever. And even somebody threatened that they were going to report me to YouTube and the FBI, and they said they were going to do this, which is one major reason that for this video response. So I find it really ridiculous that people are misconstruing my views this way, simply because I'm Muslim. It just goes to show that when met with rationality, people like to claim that the other side is simply insane and fanatical.